Good evening. I think everybody's listening to us even on Zoom. Yes. Yes, because this is a very particular presentation that we have organized with a lot of care and organization. It's not an easy one. So first of all, I'm Professor Ilaria Serra, and I welcome you to Florida Atlantic University for this beautiful night. Okay, so we have connected with us also a very important person, Maria Rosa Borghi from the Italian Consulate in Miami, who is going to say
good evening.
First greetings. And then we have here our guest, special guest, who arrived from Italy 2 days ago, Professoressa Lucia Cristina Tirri, who is the author of this very beautiful book, Itinerari autobiografici, Frammenti d'Italia nel mondo. Fragments of Italy in the world. Her part will be about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Then we'll have a little bit of interviews from all over the world, from Argentina,
from Italy,
and
from the United States.
And from Atlanta. From Atlanta. So different voices, fragments of Italy everywhere. And we will finish with the cherry on the cake, which is our Nicoletta Sorice, who will, here is the flyer, who will present her book in another 10 minutes, My Journey to America, Memoirs of a Neapolitan Woman. So it's a very homogeneous, but fragmented and colorful session that we're going to open right now. So first of all, I give the word to Maria Rosa Borghi. Please, Maria Rosa, you can unmute and say hello.
So good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank you very much, Ilaria Serra, the great professor, Emanuele Pettener, and especially my thanks to Lucia Cristina Tirri, that you are very proud to have with us. And it will be for all of us so interesting to listen this fragment that she will offer us this evening from different parts of the world. So it's so important to us in this 23rd week of the Italian language in the world, have some event like this, it's a contest to meet many people, to reflect, to think about our culture, our language, and our way of living from the past to the present and to the future. I will be happy if Ilaria Serra will send to me, to my office, after this. I think it will be very interesting event and conference and speech, the recording of this one, in order to have and to share in future with somebody else in case we need. So it will be my pleasure to read the book too, because I didn't have time to read it now. So after this, I will be very curious to read some information about. And I think especially in this very particular situation in the world, with many wars, many fighting, we need to really think about ourselves, our culture, and our aims and our values, where we would like to go and where we would like to live, in what kind of world, in what kind of better setting for everybody. And because of this, knowing our roots, our origin, can help us to be better people, not only for ourselves, but especially in the meeting of the other one. When we meet other people, in the sharing, when we share something, when we need to live together with the other one. And in this, Florida Atlantic University give us great examples, because Ilaria Serra, and thanks to the dean of the department too, they offer many times the opportunity to share with people with different culture without forget the Italian language, and and to develop and offer the Italian language as a language of culture. So I think this is really, really an important opportunity for us. And I will be happy to listen to Lucia Cristina Tirri and all the other one who want to ask some questions and share this great afternoon speech. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all the Italian General Council in Miami. Thanks.
Thank you, Maria Rosa. Thank you very much for your words, very important, and for your presence here. So now, this is the going back in time of COVID, huh? Remove pin, here we are back. Remember when we used to do a lot of this sharing screen and recording? Okay, so I'm presenting now our special guest, Lucia Cristina Tirri, who was born in New York. Not in Italy, but she went back to Italy when she was 2. So she has a very interesting story of returns, as Domenica knows. È cresciuta, she grew up in the province of Avellino in Irpinia, where today she lives and she teaches. She has graduated in languages and literature from the University of Salerno. And then she followed up with a doctorate, a PhD in languages, text and languages in English and American English in 2008. She earned that PhD. But in the meantime, she spent time in the United States, in Boston, in New York, and in Connecticut, where she gathered a lot of this material that makes this book. And she is the author of several contributions on this topic in journals and reviews. So Lucia Cristina, thank you for coming, and here to you, Fragments of Italy in the World.
Thank you, Ilaria. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here tonight. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Ilaria Serra and Dr. Emanuele Pettner for inviting me. It's just amazing, an amazing opportunity for me. Okay. Itinerari autobiografici, Frammenti d'Italia nel mondo, was born with the idea to map and to gather memoirs written by Italians who migrated abroad during the second half of the 20th century. This research refers both to migrant and ethnic literature. Even if Italian autobiographers around the world choose to write in different languages, they all reflect on their Italian background and heritage. The research is mostly about self-writings in relation to space and identity. Why space? It's common to find feelings of displacement, leaving familiar landscapes for unknown places. Investing space with meaning is essential to migratory experience, where people are called to make sense of the world. The first step for a migrant is about experiencing relocation in space. Migrants and their descendants constantly navigate and negotiate geographies of relocation and belongings. The research focuses on the formation of a new identity abroad, primarily thanks to a Florida commodity culture. The autobiographies represent interesting and exploratory itineraries and let the reader traveling to several countries of destination. According to Professor Sebastiano Martelli, a study on Italian national identity evolution should give the right attention to literary works related to migration, as historical, economic, sociological studies are not enough to explore this complex phenomenon. The literary counterpart offers a broader analysis of the most hidden aspects involved. Italian national identity cannot be fully understood without a rigorously reconsideration of the influence of its outbound immigration, since it is congenital to its complicated birth and development. In particular, self-writings of the last period of the Italian immigration let us reflect about what it means to be Italian in a culture defined by boundaries, crossing, movements, displacements, and differences. Thanks to fruitful comparisons among the experiences and the stories of Italian immigrants, Italy is remapped on a larger space, enriched by human experiences in motion. Literature becomes the link between history and consciousness, personal stories and collective memory. Memoirs activate connections and reflections and offer vivid description of different historic phases. Spaces in my research is investigated at several levels, concrete and metaphorical. So Italian history and even some uncomfortable historic periods can be read at large. It's necessary to avoid the risk of a collective amnesia about Italian immigration. Memoirs offer a way of rethinking the national and the transnational. That's why this slide, you know, the relationship with Italy and the world. And can bridge oceans. Writing can bridge oceans. A transnational approach, a broader approach. Okay. So the amazing richness and the beauty of these works, which are flourishing everywhere in the world, in Brazil, in Argentina, in France, everywhere, in Australia, everywhere. Italians are everywhere. So these works consist of the interplay between the Italian culture and literature with the literature and the culture of the countries of destination. Slide the other one, maybe. Let's see. Yes, okay. Memoirs are often the result of a long and complex research, right? Complex and long research. If you want to write about your life, you do research, you explore things, you explore your story, the story of your family, of your grandparents. And so research in order to these memoirs are used to solve old mystery, to unveil secrets, hidden passages in author's personal story related to Italy. Memoirs are often written in order to fulfill a void or to solve a riddle. Every self-writing is a self-discovery journey, and it is triggered from the will to know better one's own self and to explore one's own cultural heritage. Writing can investigate the deepest secrets of human soul. So, brick over brick, word over word, story over story, memoirs build up the autobiography of Italy. That's why I chose this image, because these books are memoirs. And they build up Italy, the history of Italy, our heritage, our past, you know? So memoirs can represent the complexities of the author's diasporic lives, their difficult choices to leave everything behind, or the deep desire to go away, wishing a new beginning without any regret, homesickness, or nostalgia. Self-writings about Italian migration can be considered metaphorical luggage for all who want to write about their life and their migratory experiences, or the experiences of their parents or grandparents. A migrant autobiography begins with the reading of books related to Italian migration. Fragmented personalities throughout writing and reading of migratory books reach a better self-awareness of their multiple identity. Self-writings contrast oblivion, promote an intergenerational dialogue, spur a new orientation, overcome and prevent feelings of loss, uprooting, deracination, displacement. As we say in Italian, spaesamento, from the word paese, not to feel this feeling of spaesamento, which can strike both who migrates, but also who stays, as Vito Teti writes in Pietre di Pane. Pietre di Pane is the one here, Vito Teti. I don't know if you can read in Calabria. If you know Calabria, there is this, yes, right there. The book, it's just a beautiful book by Vito Teti, a famous scholar, Italian scholar. And in this work, it was translated into English. The title is Stones into Bread, Stones into Bread. And there is a strong, in this work, there is a strong relationship between who lives and who stays. In Pietre di Pane, autobiographical experiences intermingled with anthropological references. Vito Teti talks about his personal experience. He grew up in a village, a small village in Calabria, without his father, who worked in Canada. During his adulthood, Teti feels the urge to discover the Canadian places where his father lived. A son of a migrant himself, Teti beautifully writes about the deep influence of Italian immigration in southern Italian families and communities. Throughout writing, authors have the chance to explore their own ambivalent and complex relationship with the place of origins or of arrival. Through written words, they can weave their memories, they can mend their inner geography. Self-writing, characterized by literary genre contaminations, is perfect to write about the liminal condition of every person, suspended by two words, torn by two or more cultures and languages. Memoirs are laboratories of history and stories, characterized by a powerful mix of memories, reflections, emotions, regrets, or even tamed anger. Self-narrations contains all the shades of human soul and human condition. We make sense of ourselves in the process of creating our story. Narration connects us to others, to a broader community. Self-writings are on the verge between history and collective memory. They are similar to the storytelling. They offer a subtle emotional narration. They are immersive and experiential. The urge to migrate, it's not only about escaping, but above all about strategies and visions of changing. The stories of the lost country allow us to discover a lot about the myriads of Italian villages and hamlets which constitute the backbone of Italy. So often, the place of origin is buried in the individual or the collective unconsciousness. Writing can deconstruct, explore, reorganize a mix of lumped memories, feelings, experiences, expressions, flavors. Late 20th century self-writings can talk to each other, and it's possible to explore how the commodity culture has influenced the transformation of identities both in Italy and abroad, in crucial years of Italian history. So, for many authors, writing becomes a home. Self-writings offer a place for contemplation and provide multiple routes towards home, a metaphorical and familiar place, a comfortable home beyond the original one. Writing offers a way of creating familiarity throughout life itineraries, which go far and beyond the canonical stories of migration to intercept original shapes of contemporary nomadism, different forms of relocation, and new transnational belongings. So the vulnerability of uprooting caused by the vulnus, the wound of migration, becomes creativity, providing spiritual and literary nourishment. Self-narrations propose new maps, different ways of being in the world. The world of self-narration is various and heterogeneous. It involves texts written by authors with different levels of education. However, all of them give the precious contribution to open up the idea of literature, add new and precious bits and pieces to migration, ethnic, comparative, and transnational literature worldwide. Language. Language is important. Yes. Okay, language and the relationship between gardens and literature. There is a beautiful word that I like that was coined by an Italian-Canadian writer. She talks about landscape. She mixed the two words, landscape and language. So landscape. In vibrant multicultural contexts like the United States, Canada, and Germany, the focus on the language is pivotal and illuminating. The new or adopted language offers the migrant a written self. Through narration, it's possible sharing ideas and entering in relation with each other and with the Italian, broad diasporic, and transnational community. Migrant writers often coin new words, such as this one, landscape. And this word is important because in this research, she can explore herself through the Italian language and through Italian landscape. In Germany, for example, another writer, another author, Marisa Fenoglio, explores the concept of altrove, somewhere else. She writes about dispatrio, referring to the loss of one's own cultural roots, a state of mind, but also a physical state. In her autobiographical works, the scrupulous aesthetics research allows her a kind of mental organization. Now, let's go there. It's better. So, space, so language is important for migrants. And space also. The first aim of a migrant is to find a better place where to live than the one left behind. Italian immigrants of the second half of the 20th century look for a two-story house with a small backyard in order to reconnect with the land and the positive aspects of the old rural culture. Metaphorically speaking, integration was like to find a new soil to put one's own roots and to found a new beginning on foreign ground. Very often, the tiny backyard is a compass and becomes the real and metaphorical place where protecting and nourishing one's own self with traditions, old values, ancient rhythms, and familiar flavors, while creating a new identity abroad, looking forward integration in the new context of belonging, and, metaphorically speaking, a more fertile terrain to put roots. The backyard often established that strong and visceral relationship with the cultivated land and becomes the privileged place where forging a transformed self. Italian immigrants were forced to leave behind a rural world, a lifestyle that was harsh and unbearable, but somehow they loved it because it was close to nature and the outdoors. Very often, the relationship with the rural village of origins is quite ambivalent. Joseph Giussiani is one of the most important writer of Italian-American literature, wrote a beautiful autobiography. The title is In una casa, un'altra casa trovo. In one house, I find another one. And there is a beautiful passage in this book. As you can see, there is a fig tree over there. This is the symbol, right, for Italian-American. And what can you see there below? What are they? What are them? Hmm?
Look like dead bodies.
Dead bodies, you're right.
Oh.
They look like dead bodies, but they are fig trees. They are fig trees.
Because of them?
Fig trees. They protect them for during winter time.
Oh.
Yeah, I discovered this. I didn't know. Yeah. Yes. And this writer describes this phase in this book. So the relationship between literature and Italian gardens is so strong. I just love this text. Can I read it? Yes. Okay. It's in Italian, ok? Scendemmo nella yarda, Italian American, mix. Scendemmo nella yarda, cioè nei 7-8 metri quadrati d'orticello attaccato alla casa. Devo velare il mio fico, annunziò finalmente lo zio, come se rivelasse il maggiore dei misteri eleusini. Questa è una parola un po' difficile, però è legata all'antica Grecia, quindi qualcosa di religioso, qualcosa di sacro, un rito sacro, ecco. Si avvicinò all'albero, un tronco d'alberello malaticcio che il primo gelo dell'inverno americano avrebbe indubbiamente ucciso. Lo toccò più di una volta, delicatamente, con quella sua mano ruvida, come se volesse dirgli di non aver paura, e voltosi poi a me. Debbo velarlo prima che arrivi il freddo di dicembre, disse con una tenerezza che era già parte del suo solenne rito annuale. Se non lo velo, continuò, muore. E se muore questo mio fico, muore l'Italia. Ecco perché. No? Insisteva a dire velare, non fasciare. L'alberello che con le sue mani aveva piantato nella sua yarda e a dispetto del clima mite era riuscito a far vivere, ma non voleva pensarlo come cosa ferita e sanguinante. Lo vedeva invece come una bella statua da tener velata finché non si riaprisse il museo col sole della nuova primavera. Osservai il resto dell'operazione di salvataggio arboreo, come se io stesso ne fossi l'autore. Stavo scoprendo un'America nuova, quell'America che non scoprì Cristoforo Colombo, ma che ogni emigrato scopre in sé, ogni giorno, ogni momento della vita. This is literature. This is literature. I just love this. And I cried when I read it the first time. I cried. Questa è letteratura pura, letteratura pura. Okay, let's go ahead. Another privileged space in migrant and diasporic writing is that related to knowledge and education. Abroad, million Italian migrants could study, that's important. Among Italian migrants of the 50s, there was real thirst for knowledge, seen as the real key for upwards mobility. Moreover, education provided real growth and personal emancipation to overcome a past of marginalization and facilitating a link with authorities, both in the place of origins, then in the new one. In many authors, the reading first, the writing later, becomes a weapon to explore the deepest and the most secret interior spaces, a plethora of contrasting feelings and perceptions. Self-narrations are precious routes of comprehension, as a comprehended time through writing represent a refound time and inaugurate a new beginning in an in-between place. The need to write for several authors is related to the need to comprehend. Slide 5, let's see. The last one, I think. Okay, this one. What do you think about this photo? Do you like this photo? This poor girl, she looks confused. No? She's sad, a little bit depressed probably. She needs orientation, maybe. She needs to write her memoir, to write about her past, about her heritage, about her grandparents. What do you think?
Out of the house.
And she looks Irish.
Mezza mano.
Italian Irish. Yeah. And there is a joke here, you see, frammenti verso framme. Fragments. Yeah, there is here something here I want to read. Let's see. This one. So fragments, true fragments, okay, true short stories, okay. We can trigger minds. Okay, a dialogue among migrant minds. I love this. What do you think?
Is this yours?
Huh?
This is yours?
Yeah.
Okay, non l'hai copiata.
No, that's mine.
It's yours.
Yeah. I want this title for my book, but the editor doesn't like it. But I think it was a good. Yeah. Okay. So let's go ahead. So both reading and writing a memoir offer to displaced selves, like this poor girl here, displaced self, disoriented selves, the chance to experience temporary feelings of belongings. A deep cultural awareness is triggered, a less nostalgic and idealized comprehension of history is allowed. The personal dimension is intertwined with the historical and the mythical one. Sometimes imagination is useful in order to fill the void, to match wide distances between the old and the new world, between the present and the past. In several self-writings, the original nuclear family, fragile and disconnected, is the starting point to trigger the interior excavation, to put together individual and collective fragmented stories, often marked by separation, exclusion, shame, wounded dignity of class division, marginalization, and discrimination, both in Italy or abroad. Migrant autobiographies deal with the process of changing and show how Italian migrants try to adapt to different lifestyles. The tiny paese, the place of origins, open to the world. It is intriguing to investigate the formation of Italian identity inside and outside of Italy, precisely during the crucial years of the second half of the 20th century. It's necessary going beyond stereotypes of Italian migration. Transnational connections among Italian diasporic writers tell a lot on Italian history, literature, culture, rural life, mentality, work, mobility, education, collective, national and transnational memory. The intergenerational transmission of memory is called transmemory and complicates ideas of Italian belongings. The mediation between Italian diasporic past and interacting and intergenerational present is relevant. Experts define post-memory as inherited memory. And we can easily say that self-writings reframe spaces of Italian migration through the lens of transmemory. Through writing is possible rethinking Italian national belonging through affective, mental, cultural, and linguistic connections that transcend citizenship. Generally, different forms of memory are negotiated. Memories are reworked in the present from one generation to the next. The analysis of places aims to illustrate how different forms of memory, mediated and direct, affect the ideas of selfhood and belonging. So, memory is slide 6, let's see, is maybe indietro, l'altro. Okay, so there are so many literary itineraries in my book. Memory is a foundational component of the human experience and a valuable critical framework to study migrations, diasporic experiences, and notions of travel and return. An important step along my voyage of exploration of self-writings was played by Museo del Diario di Pieve Santo Stefano in Arezzo, Tuscany. This is an archive of memory, which contains million memories of Italians which have been digitalized. Then my fascinating journey among self-writing started with the story of My People by Mario Mignone. It was so inspiring for me that I consider it a life-changing book, and it was for sure the starting point of my research. Another pivotal book was Italy Revisited by Mary Melfi. After these readings, I started looking to our rural heritage with different eyes. During the 50s, in the North American suburbs, Italian-American families find the perfect union between the fascinating culture of commodities and the rural ethnic background to preserve. In the suburbs, there is the spreading of a culture based on the centrality of the house. The welcoming two-story house with the front door, with the front and the back garden in the American outskirts represent the quintessential idea of Italian America and conveys its stability. In so many memoirs, rural vocation is the core of Italianness, and it's somehow refound and reevaluated abroad. Metaphorically speaking, the rural vocation, characterized by strength, determination, necessity to face the unexpected, endurance, perseverance, has been the precious seed that has guaranteed the flourishing of Italian culture around the world. This is the deep message of the story of my people, from rural southern Italy to mainstream America. Rural culture represents the backbone of Mario Mignone's family's determination. Subtitle, From Rural Southern Italy to Mainstream America, involves issues of class and mobility. It deals with the process of integration to mainstream America, but also with rural life in Italy, real nourishment to follow the way in the new world and to make it. The countryside upbringing has forged million Italian immigrants, but in Italian schools, they weren't celebrated, as Mario Mignone writes. Moreover, in Italy, during the 50s and the 60s, peasants suffered exclusion and margination. He wrote, I quote, "Not a page, nor a chapter, nor a lesson had ever been devoted to emigration, as if it did not exist, as if Italy were ashamed of those Italians who had left the patria in search of benessere elsewhere." When I came to America, notwithstanding the discrimination that was still palpable, though veiled, being Italian American was a tremendous emancipation from being an Italian farmer. The literary interconnections between gardens and writing are strong and fascinating. They offer complementary aspects in their way of bridging generations, of passing knowledge and wisdom over the years. Italian immigrants of the second half of the 20th century and their families show hunger for education and for a more egalitarian society, as barriers of class distinction were solid and strong in Italy at the time. In Italy Revisited, Conversation with My Mother, Mary Melfi explores with rare intensity mother and daughter relationship. Her writing is a way of exploring her parents' and grandparents' embarrassing, ambivalent, even mysterious past. The two women are in the kitchen. The first is cooking Italian Easter dishes. The second is looking for some food for thought. I quote, "So I look for my roots, dig up my mother's memories. I want to find my connection with the past. If I find it, I might, just might, feel less disconnected, less lonely. I am determined to fill in the blanks. There has to be more to being Italian than eating good pasta." So education is important, writing is important, no? Spiritual nourishment is important. Italy Revisited is all about returning home, but not in the physical sense, not in the sense of taking a plane and returning to the town one is born in, but returning home is in the spiritual sense. Mary Melfi left Molise when she was a child. As an adult, she believes that the immigrant experience has broken her, so she feels she has to do something to get fixed. Looking for her roots, she longs to be fixed. Research helps her to build an imagery bridge between the old world and the new one. Italy Revisited, as the author says, purports to be a memoir, but in fact, it's a history book in disguise. After realizing that very little had been written about the Italian peasantry in the English language, she starts doing research on her own. She found lots of books on what it was like to live in ancient Rome, but almost nothing in English of what it was like to live in the Italian countryside prior to World War II. At a certain point of her adult life, she experiences harsh feelings of unsettlement and displacement. Searching and writing about her authentic rural roots with their bright and dark sides help her to give a form to her formless thoughts. So I quote, "Who am I? Why am I here?" were asked and left unanswered. I spent over a quarter of a century living on the same street, in the same house, and still I'm unsure of where I belong. Quebec, forever on the verge. At the end of her memoir, the reader realizes the deep value and the beauty of the poor rural Italy. Mary Melfi writes about another Italy beyond the Renaissance. Her heritage was about a humble countryside village. I didn't know, 1977, that I didn't need Michelangelo to make me feel proud of my heritage. Peasants have fed the nation for centuries. Their lives were nothing to be ashamed of. They did the best with what they had. Italy's itinerant paradigm, with its outbound migrations, refers no longer to a geographic location, but to a virtual space that may be actualized everywhere. Memoir resonates in a complex web of echoes and coincidences, which can provide food for thought and for authenticity. A broad Italian-style gardening is one of the best ways in which the Italians transnationally have beautified the world. In California, in Australia, in South America, Italians were often hired to establish and maintain the beautiful former private gardens of the wealthy, but they also had played a part in creating the public park landscapes that could be enjoyed by all, or fruitful orchards and vineyards everywhere they arrived. Gardening is something very important for most Italians dispersed around the world. It's about three fundamental aspects of their rural culture, of their heritage, their rural culture, such as nature, food, and family. So today we have the pleasure to have, if you want to read these, I don't know, if we need, okay. Today we have some authors. One is from Calidri. We have Angela is here with us. Okay. Are you with us? No. Okay. Yeah. Angela? Angela? Chi mi deve sentire? Se no proviamo. Giovanna, Michele, Jeffrey. C'è? And Maria Giuseppina Cerutti. Okay. So Maria Giuseppina Cerutti is from Argentina. She wrote a beautiful memoir in Spanish. The title is Casita. It was translated in Italian with the title Vino Amaro. There is also the title Vino Amaro. And yes, Borgo. She wrote about her childhood in a beautiful Italian-Argentinian house in Mendoza. Mendoza is very famous for wine and for And she describes her childhood with her grandparents in this beautiful house with vineyards all around, and her great-grandparents, my industry. Right, Maria? Hi, Maria. So,
you are talking with me.
okay. Tell us something about your story and when you decide to write your memoir. Why and when did you decide to write your memoir?
I have to speak in English or I can speak in Italian.
As you like.
Okay, I prefer to speak in Italian because my English is not good. Then, grazie di questo invito, è bellissimo sentirti e che ci siano questi incontri per raccontare l'italianità attraverso la letteratura che è così interessante. Allora, mi chiedevi perché ho scritto, o mi ripeti la domanda?
Sì, perché hai scritto, quando hai deciso di scrivere il libro, perché hai deciso di scriverlo?
Sì. Guarda, io ho avuto un'esperienza molto infantile perché da quando ero piccola volevo scrivere e da quando ero piccola immaginavo che quella famiglia doveva essere scritta e che io sarei stata la scrittrice di questa storia. Con il tempo, la situazione, io sono stata in famiglia quella che chiedeva sempre perché, come, dove e da dove arrivavano. Quindi ho raccolto molte storie nella mia memoria a proposito delle memoir e così ho tenuto tanto dentro la mia testa e poi quando ho deciso di scrivere, già quando la tragedia, la seconda parte della storia, che è la tragedia del sequestro di mio nonno, lì ho deciso che l'avrei raccontata e poi un giorno ho detto, insomma, ho letto alcuni autori che mi hanno permesso, mi hanno ispirata per finalmente scrivere questa storia. Quindi, e quanto tempo ho tardato? Più o meno, insomma, ho scritto durante 2 anni più o meno questa storia.
Okay, so to translate, she's very happy that we're having these meetings on Italian identity and memoirs. And she says that when she was young, she was already thinking that she would write one day the story of her family. She was storing memories, she was asking questions, where, when, who came. And then finally, she decided to write him after a traumatic episode, which was the kidnapping of her grandfather, who was the self-made man. He had a...
No. It was the son of the self-made man, probably, right?
Era il figlio di quello che ha costruito la fazenda.
Esatto, esatto. Mio nonno Vittorio è stato sequestrato. Sì, scusa.
Sì, he was the son of her great-grandfather who came and built this successful fazenda. Grazie.
Grazie a voi.
Did he come back?
No.
Non è più tornato?
No.
No. He never came back, your grandfather. Non è più tornato solo...
No, è un desaparecido, uno scomparso dentro un campo di concentramento che poi è stato buttato al mare, al Rio della Plata, che è un grandissimo fiume che abbiamo qui, fra tanti che sono stati buttati al mare dagli aerei della Marina Militare Argentina, no? Negli anni 76, 77, 78. Sì, lui non è mai tornato. È uno dei 30.000 scomparsi dell'Argentina.
He was one of the 30,000 people who disappeared during the dictatorship in Argentina. And so was a very traumatic episode. He was lost. Even his body was lost, probably thrown in the water, in the ocean by the planes who would leave Argentina and get rid of the bodies. So you can imagine how these memoirs becomes really, really important because it reconstructs him. I diari della morte.
Gli aerei della morte.
The airplanes of death. Aerei della morte.
Adesso le vorrei chiedere un'altra domanda.
Mhm.
Il suo rapporto con l'Italia, Maria? Qual è il tuo rapporto con
Sì.
l'Italia? Con l'italianità? Tu hai vissuto alcuni anni in Italia, vero?
Sì, sì, il mio rapporto con l'Italia è un rapporto molto vicino, vicinissimo direi, nel senso che sono andata a vivere in Italia negli anni 80 e 90, ho vissuto in Italia e ho sempre l'idea di rientrare anche in Italia, ma non per ora. È un rapporto molto importante perché poi, anzi, qui ho approfondito gli studi sulle migrazioni italiane in Argentina nel mondo del vino, che è stato quello che mi ha interessato di più. E quindi è un rapporto veramente importantissimo per me, perché riguarda un po' anche la possibilità di ricostruirmi come non soltanto come professionista dello studio dell'immigrazione, ma anche all'interno di questa storia tragica di questa famiglia, no? Quindi la letteratura insieme all'Italia mi ha permesso di ripensare tante cose alla luce di questa storia, no?
So going back to Italy is very important for her to reconstruct her own identity and personality and story, not only through the study of migration to Argentina in the wine industry, but also through her own reconstruction as a person. Molto interessante, grazie. C'è un applauso qua.
Grazie a voi.
Grazie dell'intervento. Passiamo a Giovanna?
Sì. Okay.
Ciao Lucia.
Giovanna Micheli Jeffrey is from Sicily.
Bene,
She grew up here in Ribera. Right, Giovanna? Hi.
Yes, Ribera, provincia di Agrigento.
Provincia di Agrigento, and she migrated to Canada when she was 18, and then after a few years there, she moved to the United States, right? She's a professor at University of Wisconsin, right? And
Yeah.
she wrote a beautiful memoir. The title is Bitter Traits, and it was translated also in Italian, Nuovo Mondo. And she talks about education, higher education for women, the work in factories, a lot of things. And there is the theme of return that I like so much. When she came back to Italy after a few years in the States, and she didn't know. She wanted to stay, right? But then she decided to go back to the United States. Okay. Giovanna, when did you decide to write your autobiography, and why?
Bene, first of all, can you all hear me? My voice is not really very projecting. Can you hear me?
You very well.
Very well? Okay.
We hear you well.
Bene, so I wanted to make sure that you know that Bitter Trait was my first memoir in English. This is also di per sé a story. Why in English and not in Italian, since I am an Italianist by profession and career and scholarship. Mondo Nuovo, instead, which I published 2 years after Bitter Trait through an Italian press, is actually an experiment that I did in translating myself in part, rewriting, because once I was writing in Italian, it seems that, you know, something also came up. So revision, what to add, what was not said in the first book and why, do I need to tell that again, or do I need to expand it? So all these issues came. So Mondo Nuovo is an Italian memoir, keeps the same structure because I always written in stories, in core stories, focusing whether me or a particular event that formed and transformed my life, or especially, particularly in the first part, my coming of age information in Sicily, through the big effect of the large impact that stories I will hear from members of my family, and we're going back to my great-grandparents who were born after the unification of Italy, if you can imagine. Seems that, you know, those 3 generations of war were almost like, to me, not stories that I could not identify, but they were so basic, they were so fundamental, they were so filled with what we call polarity and passions that to a very, you know, sort of sensitive and imaginative child and then young person, the fact of knowing about that, and then having a context in front of me was just amazing. And of course, we write because we read, and there can be no writing without reading. For instance, I have once counted about 35 journals. When did I start writing journals? When I emigrated. And what was the reason? Well, maybe people write journals to document everything, etc. But the majority of my documentation, and the first one of all, was crying on a Christmas afternoon because it was completely unimaginable that we would be just by ourselves in an apartment and not a single other person in our family extended was with us. That it didn't seem like Christmas, just like another feast day didn't seem that. So I had so many more solicitations about writing, and I was a good writer myself. I always wrote. So, but reading, when I started reading, especially sometimes in the middle of my career, Italian American memoirs, basically, and trying to discover really Italian American identity, especially women, because I was more interested in women and Italian feminism and Italian women writing. And yet I kept reading, and I found a lot, you know, that really was very much sort of fitting a little bit of the basic blueprints I thought made my identity as an immigrant. Barolini's, Umbertina, intergenerational, but especially, for instance, Marianna De Marco Turganovich. And there were experiences in which there was everything probably I wanted to see reflected from my life there too, and identify, which was, you know, coming from nothing, sort of speaking, evolving, you know, becoming very self-conscious, etc., feeding and unfeeding, you know, feeling an imposter, the lack of encouragement in education in your family, and then, of course, you know, the leap that you take. But I thought that pretty much I did something that I didn't find there. And I was kind of hybridizing an idea of American dream, which I didn't even know was called at the time American dream, with an Italian dream. What was I doing? I became an Italianist because it was the language I knew better, because I find myself, you know, pretty much bubbling like a little child. And to an 18 years old who has a diploma as a teacher in Italy, and has already an identity developed in the place where they value you. And it's pretty much schooled, finding yourself just in a place that can be lovely and attractive in a terrible winter, of course, in Montreal. But that was attractive too at the beginning. Was extremely, extremely disorienting is an understatement, but it was just like, you know, the end of everything. But in addition to that, there was something that was still lacking and I was looking for. And I said, you know, I was thinking about filling up some of the gaps that I would find, you know, in accounting of Italian American life, you know, ethnic diaspora, etc. And that was a thing I found. What was it that I said, that's what I'm looking for. Sometimes we really look for something, and then somebody tells you, well, if you don't find what you're looking for, why don't you write your book? And I was well prepared to write that, you know, to start it. And it came to me just like stories, you know, stories that compose this big story. And they came by that, just like course, the event, the particular experience, and of course, migration as the, what do you want to call, the central part, because that was extremely traumatic and also, you know, extremely formative, transformational, etc. So the first part of the book is definitely my coming of age and what made the person, you know, the formation. The second one is really facing the new world, facing, you know, a new life, and, you know, try. But then another piece that I want to emphasize, and now is becoming pretty well recognized, you know, in what they call transnational psychotherapy, or in psychology, you know, psychology, and it is really grieving. I mean, yes, there is grieving on almost all memoir, but up to what point? Grieving something that, you know, something that is missing, and it's not because, you know, you didn't succeed or you were not happy in the rest of your life, etc. It's just like it is part of you, you know, it doesn't go away, and it's triggered, and it comes back, and you reevaluate it, you revalorize at times, you know, sometimes you hope, I wish it wouldn't come, but you want to see why it's so pervasive, why it is always present about this lost, etc. So I'm just telling you a few things about, but it is, to me, it was really filling and completing a little bit, adding a little tassel, few more, just to complete more our, you know, a sense and a view, a vision of, you know, what is like really the, you know, the migratory experience, what does it, and everything, without emphasizing the beautiful or the less pleasant, etc., but letting life and the story tell.
Thank you very much, Giovanna. Grazie mille. Thank you for your testimony. And I think we arrived to the end because I don't think there is a third.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, Isabella, Manuela, no, they're friends. Okay, so thank you to Maria and to Giovanna, who have been connected the whole time from Argentina and from Canada. And now we go to the last part, or do you want to conclude?
No,
You have concluded.
I want to thank all of
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you,
Lucia
all of you.
Cristina.
Thank you, Giovanna, Maria. It was such a pleasure to have you here tonight.
Absolutely wonderful.
Thank you. And now we have a last part, which is Nicoletta. Speaking of education, I don't think there would be a better example here of somebody who never gave up on the idea of bettering oneself and going back to study when she was over 70 and graduating when she was 81 in Italian, with an Italian major here at FAU. So not only she graduated, not only she became our pride, but also she wrote a memoir.
Oh.
She wrote a memoir, and the memoir is titled, let me find again our first screen. Exit. Here is her memoir, the main page, My Journey to America, Memoirs of a Neapolitan Woman. Nicoletta Sorice, for you.
Grazie. Buonasera, good evening.
Buonasera.
I'm honored to be here with all my Italian friends and FAU. How did I get here? How did all this happen? I began to write my autobiography at age 82. Not because I was lost or I wanted to find who I was. COVID came along and I decided to just go for it. So I started to write soon after I graduated from FAU in the summer of 2018. My book is entitled My Journey to America, Memories of a Neapolitan Woman, because I come from Naples. I was born in Rocca, province of Naples, Italy. And 2 weeks after I was born, my father left for America on January 24, 1937. He stole away on the SS Conte di Savoia. The agents facilitating his hidden voyage kept him in the closet until the ship reached New York. I was 3 years old when the World War II began. Due to the daily bombing, the village mourned the loss of sons, husbands, and brothers. With the uncertainty of another tomorrow, everything became a challenge. We hid on the ground. Staples were scarce. And for more than 5 years, no one knew when the war would end. But I was 7.5 when on June 6, 1944, Europe celebrated D-Day, the happiest day for everyone. And the Allies were received with cries of joy as the victors. 13 years after my father had left his young family, my mother, brother, and I reached the United States in 1950. We experienced many hardships due to the conflicts between my parents. Although my dad, Giuseppe D'Amanzo, was an established businessman, he did not accept 2 teens and a wife who did not have the personality of an American woman. Didn't smoke, was not blonde, didn't have blue eyes. He forgot all about how she looked. Okay, he explained that the many years away from us was a good enough reason to reject us. He wanted us to return to Italy immediately, pronto, tomorrow, today. My mom refused to leave the country that would give her children the opportunities for a better future. My parents separated and we left Shreveport, Louisiana. We went to New York to live with my mother's sister, Maria Stella, and her family. The 3 of us soon learned that to succeed, we had to face the hustle and bustle of the big city of New York. My mother says, I'm New York. During my growing up years, the ups and downs taught me how to improve on the things I could change. My mantra has been perseverance. After 8 years, I returned to Italy to visit Nonno. And it was in Rocca that I met my future husband, Paolo. The highlights of my life were my marriage, raising 3 children, Teresa, Sabato, and Maria. Grandchildren, Matthew, Isabella, and Paolo. They have given me great joy. My career of 30 years with the Social Security Administration began in the World Trade Center. And later, the family moved to Florida in 1982. And after 11 years, Paolo died. Soon after my retirement, I craved a formal education. At age 72, I enrolled at Broward Community College. After receiving my AA, I continued by enrolling at Florida Atlantic University. This past Sunday, I watched Sunday Morning. The New York Times columnist David Brooks stated, there are diminishers and luminaries in life. I lived a lifetime among diminishers who had no problem reminding me of all that was wrong with me. But I met luminaries at Florida Atlantic University. Dr. Ilaria Serra, Dr. Emanuel Petner, Dr. Rutenberg, and Dr. Peterson, and many other professors whose knowledge inseminated the positive in me. And like a sponge, I absorbed their teachings. Dr. Sedla encouraged me to write my life story in my senior year. During COVID-19, I spent many hours typing away episodes from birth to present. The events are chronological, and the more I remembered, the more I became aware what my parents had gone through and who I had become. I like to have a quote from Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Life is not what we lived, but what one remembers and how one remembers it to recount it. Throughout the writing process, Donna De Leo Bruno, a Bristol, Rhode Island teacher, helped correct my ambitious undertaking. Due to the repeated revisions, it took almost 5 years. My 2023 resolution was to have my memoirs published. My youngest daughter, Maria, and granddaughter, Isabella, has spent many hours tweaking, rephrasing, and adding information that had slipped through my aging mind. And together we created a beautiful story. However, I would like to read my favorite episode. There are 386 of them. I did not keep a journal, but my mind completely clicked and it would not stop. I remembered and remembered and remembered. So my favorite episode is Midday Lunches. We lived with my father's widower dad. He was the mailman of the town and the love of my life. Nonno delivered mail by foot to rural areas, hamlets, and mountaintop cabins. He returned home from the main lunch at 1 p.m. He was always sweaty and needed to change into the clean thermal undershirt. Before sitting down for lunch, my brother Tonino and I helped them wash and dry off with a clean towel. And Anna, the oldest daughter, was the family cook. And he gave her many kudos. Naninella, what a wonderful aroma. Naninei, che bella odore. He loved everything she cooked. He was always served first and wished everyone a good lunch. And we in unison replied, hearty appetite to all. Buon appetito a tutti. Round table. Tonino sat to Nonno's left, and I sat to his right. He gave us morsels of food from his plate. He was full of praises for us. He said out loud that he was blessed because we were the most wonderful grandchildren, 2 obedient angels. Due angeli obbedienti, they always say yes, sì, nonno. He lamented that someday we'll leave him to join our father in America, and he will never see us again. When he said that, my brother and I sat closer to him as if glued to him. During the daily lunches, my father, Giuseppe, was often the subject of conversation. My aunts, 4 of them, and 2 uncles painted a picture of their oldest brother from their best memory as if describing Ulysses. And what they missed the most about him is remarkable fastidious style, good looks, and beautiful natural gift for singing, which was evident when he sang in the church the Ave Maria by Schubert. My mother, Menechella, had a different memory of Giuseppe, who had left her after 3 years of marriage and 2 children to raise. There was no forgiving. She had her spin regarding the absent husband, who had not written for well over 10 years. And since his departure, the long silence only proved to her that he was irresponsible from the day she married him. She vented that he was stubborn, short-tempered, delusional, and never completed the task he initiated. She lamented about the wrong marriage. Amala sorte. The family quickly replied, Menegella, we still love him. Menegella mangor bene. One can well imagine what my young brain stored. Later, I found it easy to recall what mattered to me. The narrative is of how I lived my life. The photos in the book or of my relatives, whom I have always kept their images in my heart. And now I want to thank Ilaria. And dolcezza. Thank you.
Prego.
Well, this is my work. Thank
A
you.
very touching end. And I want, with this beautiful and heartfelt applause that I share also with our guests from abroad, I would like to close at least the formal part with the Zoom connection. We can continue to talk to each other. And I just want to say how incredible it was this trip, because you started with very macro themes and a big landscape. And then we ended inside a house in Roccarainola on the table with a nonno and two grandchildren together speaking Napolitan. It was amazing, really an amazing parable that we did tonight. Thank you everybody for being here, and thank you to our speakers, all of them, Lucia Cristina, Maria Josefina, Giovanna Miceli, and Nicoletta Sorice. Thank you, Rose. Goodbye.
Grazie a te, grazie a tutti.
Arrivederci, arrivederci.
Grazie.
Arrivederci. Sì, sì.
Arrivederci.
Ciao, arrivederci Maria Rosa, arrivederci Giovanna.
Grazie mille.
Grazie a voi, è stato molto bello.
Ciao, ciao.
A presto, a presto.
Ciao. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you.